All right, Facebook, YouTube, Merry Christmas. And we'll give it a few minutes for people to pull up. I know we're starting a little early here. Always been curious when these things, when you go live, how long it is from when you hit the go live button till like it actually starts showing up on people's pages. And if if you're spending the first 5 minutes pretty much just rambling to yourself and not doing anything at all. But we'll wait for a minute or two here till we get some peeps showing up. And if you can hear me, and if you can see me, let me know. Thumbs up or something. So, I know we've got 4 people watching here on Facebook as it's loading up. Starting a little bit early tonight, guys, because kiddies are coming back at 8 o'clock. And the house will not be quiet after they come home. If anyone of you know you have 10-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and 4-year-olds, and you get them all in the same room, there's chaos. So getting this done before they get home. But it's been quite a year for us. Let me know in the comments how your year was. We've heard ups and downs, people having struggles, people having victories. So we'll talk a little bit about our year, some of the things that we took away from that. But the main thing here is calling this the Livestream 20K, because this is our Facebook group, Farm Builder Entrepreneurs, crossing the 20,000 member mark. And we've tried to filter out as many of the catfish salesmen as we can. My moderators will get that joke for sure. We've tried to keep it very focused with folks who are actually in the game or wanting to get into farming, and try to create a very unique space in social media where ideas, topics, concepts can be discussed with civility, disagreement, but still having that element of civility to it, where we can actually learn something from each other instead of cut and paste posting, kitty videos or whatever happens to strike your fancy, or complaining about the government or the USDA or those other people. It's always those other people that they're the ones who are causing the issues. So someone posted though a post here in just half an hour ago that I thought was spot on perfect for kicking off this live stream here together this evening. And we'll throw in some Q&A here at the end, whatever questions you guys might have, or let me know how your year went as well, as we're getting up here to Christmas and the end of the year. For us, it starts slowing down this time of year. All the turkeys are done, chickens are gone. For us, it's just pigs and beef right now, so our workload is kind of almost cut in half, and we go into a little bit of a hibernation for December, and then January start loading back up and getting ready for spring, which comes for us here in Virginia. By March, we're out and going again. But December, we're sleeping like 9, 10, 11 hours a night, as opposed to 6 during the summer. So hitting a little bit of this hibernation cycle. And wondering, what was all this sleep? But anyway, Mark posted 30-something minutes ago in the group a great post that I wanted to jump off of, because it captures some of the things that concern me and patterns that I see happen, in this industry of regenerative agriculture. And so he posted, diversification is protection against ignorance. It makes little sense if you know what you're doing. Quote by Warren Buffett. Kind of skim through here. He says, when I first started in this business 18 years ago as a bright-eyed first-generation farmer, I attempted to be Joel Salatin, as his books were among the first I read. I mean, that's very common. I think a lot of people have followed that pattern. Though I can remember the day standing in a field trying to move hen houses after cattle while stretched too thin of money and time, I declared, F. Joel Salatin. Probably his name has been turned into a curse word at some places. Anyway, he goes on. Mark goes on. Now, in no means is this meant to discredit Joel with what he's accomplished and done for the industry. He's been amazing. It was just a realization that his resources weren't mine. Over the years, I have shed those things that don't fit my resource base, i.e., skills, land, markets, and tried to focus on things I do well, which is remarkably limited. You might be undercutting yourself there a bit, Mark. Probably doing well. But in doing so, it has helped me grow the business and find the people and things that can do everything else. Yes, diversity in nature is key, but diversity with enterprises generally just takes resources away from each other rather than synergistically working together in the sexy way you may want them to. What are your thoughts? So this is a very common scenario, and one that we certainly fell into ourselves when we started coming up on 10 years ago. We were talking the other day about, are we going to do anything special for the farm, that we are hitting our 10th anniversary this coming year of getting after it out here. And we followed that same kind of pattern of, and I maybe should know better because I apprenticed at Joel's Farm and worked with them for 13 months, but I still did the same thing, that when we got started, we wanted to do everything that we saw down there, and we jumped right in, and we were doing cows and pigs and chickens. And I think about 3 years into the business, we were up to 9 to 10 enterprises, different things going on inside of our farm business, and we were just drawn ragged all over the place. And that's happened to us, and it's happened to others. Some people throw in the towel and they quit at that point. Other ones go through an evolution of simplification, where you figure out, hey, doing all this other stuff is not working. We're drawn thin, we're doing nothing well, and we need to shrink it back to what is our core enterprises, what can we do well, and then go from there. And so that's what Mark did, that's what we did, and folks who make it and who are successful in this business, they do, is you figure out what are you very adept at doing, whether you have the skill for it, the resources for it, the market for it, and you make that your core enterprise. And I think if you talk to Joel about this, he will say the same thing, and it might be a extrapolation from his books that people try to go do everything. But you need to find that 1 to 2 enterprises that will be your core enterprise, that they are going to pull the weight of your business. And then as you go on, that's when you can begin to layer in these other enterprises in a complementary fashion. So you don't need to have every maggot scratched from a cow pie and eaten by an egg layer. You just don't need to do that the first year. You could start with just managing beef and getting your rotation set and understanding how the cows work and all that before you jump into other stuff. So good to see everyone jumping in. Terry, Jordan Winters, another Polyface alumni there. Cremona, good to see you. And Dave Moore, I have no idea who that is. No, just kidding. Good to see you here, Dave. So something that mature enterprises or growing up enterprises go through is this process of simplification, of narrowing it down to what are the core elements that your farm needs, getting very good at those before you begin to add other things back in. And a lot of times you will find that these complementary enterprises are better handled by someone other than yourself and on a different farm. So for us right now, we do not have one egg laying chicken on our farm because we found other farms that do it far better than we do. They have lots of children who can collect eggs, and they're growing their own grains, and they're able to do it at a low cost, where they are hitting the production standards that we would like to have, and they're producing it at a cost where we are more profitable buying wholesale from them and reselling it at a lower retail price than we were when we were doing it. And so it's a win across the board. We're making a good profit margin on it. They're making a good profit margin on it, and we are giving them the outlet for a scale production model that they have, and we don't have to worry about doing the egg layers. What we focused on was beef and pork, and then poultry as our core enterprises, with pork being the main one that we do with piglets and all the way through to finished. But something about this concept of simple, though, that if you have read books like Extreme Ownership or other guys, they talk about making processes as simplified as you possibly can. And what I've found is you need to continually keep thinking, how can I simplify this? Good to see you here, Sam. Even this fall, as we're going through, getting sows ready for winter and getting pigs ready, I'd look at something and say, we can do this simpler. How can we strip even more steps out of this process and just make these things as simple as we possibly can? And I think that's what Mark was going after in his post, was asking, or getting at, was what is the simple? And a lot of times you try to mimic someone else because you see success. I'm going to do it the way that guy does, and you just copy what they do without really looking at what are the core principles that I can extract from what they're doing. So, you don't need to do exactly the way someone like Joel does it, or like we do it, or someone else does it. What you need to look for, and what I look for, is what are there a couple of core principles there that we can grab and extract, and then we can take that back to our farm, and with that mindset then look at our operations and our enterprise. So something like simple. Doesn't matter if you're doing cut flowers, produce, chickens, pigs, what have you. If you're doing a continuous graze system, rotational grazed, feed out, feedlot, it doesn't matter. You can extract a principle like simple and go back and begin to look at what you're doing and apply that. Where is places that we can simplify this process? Where can we prioritize profitability? And then move on from there. So that was a good post there by Mark. Appreciate you making that. And don't feel discouraged. That's a process a lot of people go through, I think, as they are building these farm businesses. Oh, Terry's here, and Jackie, two of our moderators here in Farm Builder Entrepreneurs. So you probably see different folks at different times. There are 6 people behind the scenes, in addition to me, who help moderate the group here. Terry and Jackie are 2 of them, and they get after it a lot. And all of us have this new condition in farmers, farmer on cell phone neck, where you're walking around the field looking at your phone all the time. Personally, for me, tractor driving, it's a good time to get on the phone and check stuff. So what do you guys got going on? What do you want to discuss here? I really didn't want to, come in and preach for an hour here. I would love to have a conversation. Tell me how your year went. I know Terry has had a big change this year in purchasing her farm, and she is getting moved out there and discovering all kinds of archaeological items in her sheds and posting about that. There's my mom, Sarah. That's right. She is corralling the children T-Rexes over at her house so I can do this. Let me scroll this down. Chopped liver. That's right. Chris, one of our other moderators. So a lot of, depressing news in the ag circles, over the last year, really 2 years, with, prices are down across the board. And here in my home state of Virginia, dairies are going under at a rate of 1 every 3 to 5 days is what I saw. Was talking with some buddies of mine at a church event the other day who they've got about 200 head dairy. So, they are, of course, not doing very well. Milk prices are well below the cost to produce. And, grains are not doing well. Prices are down. If you're on the East Coast, there was a lot of rain this year, which caused other issues. And there's always something, something that can be throwing a wrench in the model. But do you think, though, that how long do you think we have let's say a right to complain about something before it is now our responsibility to take action on the problem? Take for instance dairy. Dairy prices have been in pits for a long, long time, and the complaints have been the same the whole time, but not much action has been taken on the part of producers to affect a change. Now, I'm not in dairy. Maybe some of you guys who are could chime in on that. But at what point do we need to move beyond what waiting for regulation to solve a problem, for commodity systems, for big vertical integrators to solve a problem, and when do we take that really control over the business back and begin to implement change? Now, changes are always going to be painful. No one says it's easy at all to shift a production model from one thing to another, but is there some point before the business goes bankrupt and stuff is being sold at the auction that it might be time to step in and say, hey, this is it, we're making the change? Big 400-acre place up the road from us this year, commodity dairy. They went out of business, went under. All the cows were gone, just one day, and nothing else happened with the farm all year. The hay field sat there. They didn't even get mowed for hay. All the machinery sitting in the barns doing nothing, and there the farm sits. Was there a point earlier, years ago, maybe even a decade ago, where the owners should have sat down and said, hey, this is not going well. We need to assume responsibility for the shift that needs to happen and to make a change? About 15 minutes. That's right. Get after it there, Chris. So, I try to be very sensitive on this topic because farmers are a very unique breed of people in that we are incredibly loyal and hardworking, and sticking to a task despite difficulties and obstacles is not something that we're scared of, but that doesn't need to bleed over into insolvency at some point. There has to be a point where you grab that responsibility and affect a change. So that's why on some of these more complainy kind of posts or cut and paste of an article, I kind of make a comment of, I'm interested in solutions. I've heard complaining for 20 years on dairy and very little offered in the way of solutions. And my personality type is that I'm going to wait about a day for someone else to make a decision on something before I start making a decision on it. And that, that's, like I said, changes are painful. Changes are not pleasant. They require more effort, but is lingering in a legacy production model what you want to do? Are you going to ride that horse till it drops over and it's dead, or are you going to make a change and actually save the farm? And so this begins to bleed over into another topic that is almost a dirty word in the farming community, and especially in the regenerative circles. It seems to me, at least from what I've heard and read and been exposed to, that is that the word profit is somehow a dirty word. That if we are seeking to make money with our farms, we somehow are selling our soul to the man, or we are degrading the environment, or destroying the soil, or abusing animals, or taking it. Here's the big one: is we are ripping people off. We are ripping the customers off by charging more. And this is the one that I push back on the most, because when you understand correctly how you should structure profit into your business, that you have a umbrella of ethics or context that you are operating under. So, we're not going to be profitable by, doing something that's outside the scope of our stated ethical guidelines. But if we're operating inside of that umbrella, why should profit not be one of the lead elements sitting at the table when we're making these decisions? Because I can tell you, for the dairy industry, profit has not been making the decisions for a very long time. There have been other reasons driving the decisions to stay in the business, and the number one reason is probably debt service, that you have debt on the farm and the infrastructure to service. But I think we need to get past the notion that profit is a dirty word, especially in the regenerative agricultural circles. There tends to be more of an attraction, I understand, to folks on, let's say, the left side of the political spectrum with regenerative ag. And sometimes it's, to me, the people who are complaining about profit are coming from that political standpoint. Perhaps a deeper understanding of what, ethical profitability should be, would be useful at that point. Trying to thread this needle finely here. But we do need to get past the notion that profit is bad, because for the last, let's just say 50, 70 years, farmers have been, let's say, leveraged, maybe exploited on their nobility. That, we were told, not me, probably not you, but our parents or, grandparents were told during World War II that it was our responsibility to feed the world, to produce as much as possible, to produce it as cheaply as possible, because there is there's a world that needs to be fed during a war and post-war. That mentality has lingered on, though, through today, where we as farmers now take it as our moral responsibility to feed the world as cheaply as possible. And that's not the case anymore. Europe does not need us anymore. Asia does not need us to feed them. They are more than capable of doing that themselves. But there seems to be this notion still lingering around. And as an agricultural community, perhaps we are allowing ourselves to be taken advantage of by other entities, let's say, that are leveraging this moral obligation, that it's now our moral obligation to do this. And I think that needs to be rejected. All right, couple comments here. Chris said that's one of the great things about a diverse group like this. Multinational membership with a wide range of experience and focus. Need a solution for a crippling paradigm? Ask someone with a harebrained idea crazy enough to work. Absolutely, 100% agree. Dale says 10% for process improvement and business growth. Is this also a bad word? Yeah, growth and business. Profits. Yeah, another naughty word we should not be using. It's interesting, the conversations that you can have with folks. We had our local rep for Farm Credit out the other day, where we have a line of credit with them, which we've used one time. Right now, balance is at zero, but it's a real good backstop to have behind your business. And so there's paperwork we got to sign every year. And he was out here the other day. Had about an hour conversation with him. And one of the things he was, we were having this discussion. He was, agreeing on a lot of points. And he was telling me that a lot of the businesses he works with, when they look through their numbers, there is nothing on depreciation. There's no equipment. There's no improvements that are on the depreciation schedule at all, because they have not made any improvements in the last 30 years. It's really coasting on a legacy set of infrastructure. All right, Ryan says we're not in the dairy. However, Hurricane Michael devastated our infrastructure on October 10th. Absolutely, know a lot of guys down there that got wrecked. Um, yeah, yeah, that was a hurricane that kind of came up out of nowhere, and when it hit, you guys know you were there, absolute destruction, and I really feel for you guys. Focus on our farm will certainly be narrow, and we will become much leaner in the future. I had a guy sending me pictures of a center pivot irrigator that the wind blew over. There's like nothing on those things to blow to push yet that flopped him over. Terry, there's a difference between making obscene profit and a profit that keeps you in business and living a decent life. Without a profit, I know there are left-leaning folks who'd be unable to do the work needed to create healthy, sustainable food. That's right. That's right. How are we viewed as it relates to infrastructure maintenance and facility updating? I'm not sure. How are you viewed? Do I think subsidies drives this cheapening, feeding the world for profit, coming from a snap-driven economy here? So, I don't know, but here's what I observe is there's only one industry, it seems, in the world where the patient zero, I guess, producer, the zero producer, the very beginning stage of the process has absolutely zero say in the price they are paid for their product, and that is agriculture. If you are doing anything at the commodity level, you have zero say over the price you are paid, short of just not selling it. And that obviously doesn't make you any money. So, when you are producing calves for the sale barn, you have zero say over what you are paid. Now, the typical way that farmers try to direct this is you control input costs. Some inputs will bring you more money at the sale. Some are going to cost you too much, and you kind of strike a balance between, hey, are we going to give them 7-way vaccines? Are we going to leave them as bulls? Are we going to steer them out? Whatever. There's all these decisions. Those are decisions the producer can make. But when it actually comes to sitting in the auction ring and selling that animal, you have absolutely no say over what the price is, unless you're sitting there bidding on your own animals, which does happen. Is any other industry in the world driven this way and profitable over the long term? You think about the automobile industry, the cell phone technology industries. They are setting the retail price for their product at the end because they are controlling retail. And agriculture as an industry has largely given up that control to middle processing and packaging and further on processing. So, the dairymen do not control the price they are given for the milk. The beef producer does not, the poultry producers, and so on. It's up to them to try to find profitability somewhere in their savings. And that, to me, is the biggest misstep, I guess, taken by the agricultural community, was we surrendered the power of price, that we had absolutely no say in what the price was going to be on the product we were selling, and we were left to scratch profitability out of the inputs somewhere. And you wonder why these farms have no assets depreciating on their general ledgers, because they can't buy anything. They're having to scratch profitability off of the legacy infrastructure, or you're having to extract it from the soil, maybe by not using the correct supplementations and inputs and so on. It's a system that drives, it puts a lot of pressure, I guess, on the bottom end where the producers are. So to me, that's the number one thing that needs to change, and one of the biggest reasons we went into the type of agriculture we did was we wanted to have the power of price. We need to be able to adjust the retail price to properly account for the costs of production. So, are subsidies driving this? Not as much, I think, as the commodity system. 2015 to today, at the peak of the cow market, when everyone thought, good times were here to stay, just like Bitcoiners were this time last year. Good times were here to stay. $3.50 for calves, some of them cracking $4. $3,000 for garbage bred cow pairs. And so everyone went out and spent all this money doing upgrades. Market dropped off 70% on some prices. A 70% cut from that peak to where they are now. If you look at retail beef prices from that point to now, there has only been an 11% reduction. So there is a huge chunk as it went through. Prices are high. This one drops way down. This one just comes down a little bit. That margin is sticking into the middle processing now, and that's why Cargill's division had a third quarter profit this year that broke all other profits that they've had for in a quarter. So that's what I think is driving a lot of this, is this commodity-based system that all it does is encourages more and more and more, and that's the only solution that's offered, is produce more, produce it cheaper, produce it more efficiently, to the point where really the last element left to be fed through this process of efficiency is the human element. We've made the machines as efficient as we can. We've made the genetics as efficient as we can, and so now the only thing really left is to remove the human component from it and have the machines do it. And so you see this now. Robotic milkers, autonomous tractors, doing things. And so I'm not saying that in opposition to technology, but with an understanding of what is driving those innovations is the removal of the human element from the process, because that's the only cost left to trim. All right. Terry, what do you hope to achieve in 2019 with the Farm Builder Entrepreneurs Group? I don't know. It's for those of you who don't know, Farm Builder was an idea I came up with probably 5 years ago now. Finally, got crazy enough to start doing something with it probably 2 years ago, maybe about 2 years ago. And the primary behind it was to bring the concepts and ideas of what we were doing with our farm and what I had seen on other farms that were actually working, and bring them to a new platform of information distribution. Books are the way information was distributed, from ancient times up till 10 years ago. And there are a lot of good books out there on agriculture. There's hundreds of them. But when it came to digital distribution of information, my observations were there were a lot of bigger YouTube channels and Facebook groups and so on that were maybe a little bit more oriented towards small scale, towards homesteads, towards or more niche permaculture and so on. But there was not a noticeable presence of doing these things at scale, of regenerative agricultural practices being shown and demonstrated at scales that are actually going to generate income for the owners. And that was the area that I really wanted to address was, hey, instead of having a YouTube video about how to farrow one sow, let's have some YouTube videos about how we do it with 100, and show how this can be done at an actual scale to make businesses profitable to the point where you can have employees and you can have this phantom concept that we call profitability. And for a while I wanted to do it, but I wanted to have a pretty good track record behind us before launching into it. So we farmed for the first 7 years with our operation, I think, before we made the first video that we put up. And so it's slowly been growing from there. I don't know where it's going to go. We started doing some of our pork schools last year that they went really well. I got invited this past fall to do two of the pastured pork schools with Joel Salatin. So we did one in Indianapolis and one in Dallas that went reasonably well. I was just told the other day, though, they are passing on doing any pork schools for 2019. So if you were planning on doing a Stockman Grass Farmer pork school in 2019, you are out of luck. You'll have to come to one of ours. So we will be doing those next year for sure. We've got a lot of ideas of things that we would like to do, of holes that we see in the digital space. People who, you know what's needed when you see the same question asked about every 3 or 4 days. And the group has been really good at helping us identify those areas, and giving us a way to get information out and to really help folks who have questions. To me, it's a travesty that someone worked up the number that it was 90% failure rate of startup farms. I don't know where the source data for that was, but typically businesses have a 50 to 70% failure rate, so it doesn't really surprise me. I think that is a travesty. We need a lot of new farmers to take over this great turnover of agricultural businesses that's going on right now, and any little bit that we can do to help that process is what we're hoping to achieve. So for 2019, we're going to be doing pork schools here on the farm. We might take it on the road. I've got a speaking gig at the Virginia Biological Farmers Association coming up in January, so I'll probably post that up here with the info. We'll be talking about pigs. Big surprise. But other things that I would like to branch into, I'd really like to do a beef boot camp, which would be probably a 2-day event just on beef. We'd actually go to the stock sale and tour the bowels of the beast. Show you guys how that's done. But it's really going to be driven by what we have time for. We do have a full-time other business with our farm, J&L Green Farm, that keeps us busy 7 days a week. I think for 2018, we worked probably 350 days on the farm. So we don't take breaks, we don't do weekends. That's our full-time deal. And this farm builder thing is the crazy second business that I started that I'd love to spend more time with, but it kind of has to fit in around the other thing. So that answers your question there, Terry. So what else do you guys got? Let me look up here at YouTube. Oh man, all kinds up there. YouTube's getting after it with the questions. All right, so some YouTube questions. Did you use debt? If so, come back. Come back. What are the top things you borrowed money for? So yes, we do use debt in our business. Let's pull this back briefly for a second. If you are running your business at, say, a 10% profit margin, that means 10% is available for capital growth in the next year. So if you are growing the business by, say, 15 to 20%, you will run out of money. It's called overrunning your headlights. Even though the business is growing, you're doing well, cash flow is coming in, you're out of money because the business is growing faster than, let's go here, live chat. Business is growing faster than your dollars are. So you will get into a scenario where you have to consider taking on debt. Some people have very strong opinions about doing business with no debt. Other people have no problems with taking on tens of millions of dollars in debt. For us, it's a very narrow band that we will use debt. We don't use debt for operating expenses. We do use revolving credit for operating expenses because that finances our vacations, harvesting bonus points off of plastic. But for long-term debt, we are going to look at loans that are short-term, 3 to 5 years, things that are going to immediately bring impact to our bottom line. So, a noted one that we did a couple years ago was spending money to put in our on-farm processing facility for us to do poultry. Within a month of us completing that, it was generating money. And so that is what we are looking for. I'm still driving 2002 truck, even though I would love to have something newer. It's not something that if I went out and bought a new truck tomorrow, it's not going to make the business any more money. And so we want a quick return on any debt that we take. Now, interesting thing to know is what is considered, I think, I may be screwing this up, but I think I'm right. What is considered acceptable debt to income ratio for most farm businesses, I believe, is a 4-to-1. So if your business is generating $1 million in revenue a year, it's considered acceptable by financial institutions for you to carry $4 million in debt. That to me is scary town. That's a pretty dangerous place to be from a business perspective. So for us, we have that flipped around the other way. Our debt is at a ratio of almost the exact inverse of that we are at a 1-to-4 debt to income ratio. So we're carrying the amount of debt that we carry, we could easily pay off if we were to liquidate some of our assets. We wouldn't even have to liquidate all of them. So to me, that's a safe thing to do, especially with money being pretty cheap right now, even with these interest rate hikes we've had in the last couple of years. It's, to me, if you can, through debt, acquire an asset that will bring, say, $100,000 of new revenue into your business, and it's only costing you $5,000 in interest to do so, something like that to me is a no-brainer. But it's something you have to be very careful with. You can't finance through debt toys that make you happy. Unfortunately, I love toys. If I could go out and buy toys all day long, I would. But simple, lean, and have the tools that you need to get the job done. Have the right tool to get the job done, but that doesn't mean you need the newest and shiniest tool. More questions up here from YouTube. We need to end corporate factory farming. We need to stop buying their products. That would end it. Manipulation of prices on all commodities is basically criminal. It serves only the 1%. Well, they're the ones doing it, so I guess there's some elements of that. Okay, Brian says, very helpful, inspiring information. Thanks, Farm Builder Entrepreneurs. Absolutely. It was all of you probably associate with other farm groups on Facebook or YouTube. I know I do. And that was one of the things we very deliberately wanted to avoid, was the kind of bickering and infighting and backstabbing and just nipping and kind of spiteful language going back and forth on posts. And so that's big kudos to our moderating team who spend a lot of time on this, is keeping conversations focused and on the topic. If someone asks a question about what do you guys like for your soil temperature to plant corn, or what depth are you running your till, and it turns into a wild debate about GMO, that that kind of thing is not what we're going for. Let's solve the bigger issues of stable farm businesses before we try to run after these little other issues. So kudos to you guys. We were worried when we opened the group up a little over a year ago. It went from maybe 1,500 people and blew up really fast because we kind of changed some of our admission protocols, let's say. That was a concern that we had, was would we be able to keep it focused and on point, and for the vast majority of the time that is the case. So kudos to you guys as well for keeping it civil, sharing what's going on with you, because there's a couple basic things we're going after. Is what is working for you in your business? What are successes you would like to share from your business? What has personal application to you or from you on something that you're doing? We aren't looking to cut and paste a bunch of articles, and that's probably the number one thing that we do spend time doing, is just deleting posts that are out of context. They're not relevant If it's a cut and paste kind of thing, just throwing an article in here, that's not what we're looking for. We want actual personal application. What are you doing with this on your farm? Are you, an article about erosion or whatever it is? How is it working for you on your farm? If you're not doing it, then what's the point? We all can find these articles. We all have Google. But we want to hear is actual success of what are you doing? And so that's what we try to do, is post, this is what we're doing on our farm, or this is what we're seeing at someone else's farm, and this is what actually is happening. It's not an abstract, it's not a concept, an unsubstantiated concept. It's, hey, this is how we're doing this. This is what works well. This is not what doesn't work well. What do you guys think? What would you guys do differently? So that's kind of the point of the group. All right. Any more questions? Coming from YouTube. Okay. You guys are good there. All right. What do you guys got? Some of you still hanging around? I've got a couple more minutes. Let's chat. Who here is going out and buying some cull cows this year? I am waiting till after the first of the year for tax purposes to go out and buy a bunch of cull cows. So our herd is really low right now. To me, we will not get on the soapbox of taxes too much here, but isn't it interesting how you can work your tail off to build a farm and build a business, and you are penalized by the IRS over someone who just works the 9 to 5 and collects a paycheck and does nothing with their life besides that job? Not to sound bitter about it, but we missed out on a tax return last year because of basically our sales needed to be 10,000 more than they were. And so, really it puts you into a scenario of you have to manipulate what you do with your business in order to achieve a favorable tax status, so you're not stuck with a huge tax bill at the end of the year. And so for us, that's why we are not buying cows right now, and why I'm waiting till after the first. That this was our biggest sales year ever. That one thing about our business for when we started in 2009 through today is it never went backwards. It always grew year over year. And so it's looking like from 2017 through 2018, we probably grew the business by, we'll know here at the end of the month, but we're projecting about 18% in revenue, which was fantastic. Better than I had hoped for, but we're trying to make sure we make enough profit to actually qualify for tax credits. So that is what the bean counters tell me, and that's why we're waiting. Red says we're adding 4 cows after the first of the year. Awesome, man. Good to see that happening. I'm looking forward to getting back up to the sale and getting some critters. We actually just sent off the calves we got, our quote-unquote free calves. We bought 35, 40 cull cows last year. We ended up with 15 calves. So we sent 13 of them off on Monday. And so that's a nice little sale happening there. And we'll be able to take that money, plow it right back into cull animals that we'll buy after the first of the year. Sorry here. Getting thirsty here, guys. So, all right. 7:59. Kitties will be coming back soon. So we'll probably wrap it up here. Check this over here. Cool. All right. So, good to hang out with you guys. Something we'll do a lot more here in the winter in our off season. I know I kind of stirred up a little controversy when I posted a couple weeks ago calling this our off season, and some people got righteous saying, I have no off season. I work 25 hours a day, 400 days a year, and I have no breaks. Okay, that's great, but we do like to enjoy a little bit of an off season here, which for us means we work 50, 60 hours a week instead of 80 or so. We actually sleep in a little bit, getting 9, 10 hours of sleep a night instead of 6. That's our off season activity, and I make no apologies for having an off season. Let's see, do you envision a larger herd in the future? For Michael, absolutely, man. I just don't have any more grass. We've got 51 acres of grass that we work with, and if I could, if I could lay operations of cows on top of each other, I absolutely would have more cows out there. We are in an incredibly competitive environment for pasture land. The waiting list is long, and the circle of friends is tight when it comes to people and their properties. Cull cows, as in non-breeding stock that will work as dairy producers. No, cull cow. I mean, those would be cull cows from dairy. What these are, Dale, is the way our sale for beef cattle around here works. If you bring in a breeding cow, you can pay $5 to have her preg checked, and they will, they'll palpate her. All right, 6-month calf. They'll put with paint mark a 6 on the side, and then it will be run through as a bred cow at the beginning of the sale and sold at a per head price. So 800, 900, 1200. That's what prices are now. They used to be a lot more. Pound cows or cull cows are all female cows, say over 1,000 pounds, or obviously old ones, old crippled ones. They are sold by the pound at the end of the sale. It's everything from, say, a 3-year-old heifer that just never was bred and was a pet or something, to heifers that didn't breed, or the person who brought them in didn't have them preg checked, all the way through to old retiring cows, ones that are crippled, obviously have major issues, and so on. Inside of that group of, say, 150 that would go through in a night, there will be about 20 to 30 of them that are what we're looking for, that still have a lot of life left in them. Somehow they just end up in that part of the sale, and we found that we get about a 40% calving rate from those unpregnancy checked female cows that are sold by the pound at the end of our sale. That's the way it works. I've had other people tell me it's not this way where they are, but where we live in Virginia, a lot of folks have little cow-calf herds, 20, 30 head, maybe 15, and they sell calves once a year, sell calves once a year just to pay the taxes and some bills. And for a lot of them, it's the first 10 that get on the trailer. Those are the ones that are going. Literally, get them into the corral. Oh, there's those 3 that never come in the corral, so they never go. But, it's the first 10 that we get on the trailer. Those are the ones going to the sale. And that's what I'm there looking for. And that's where we have carved out a entire enterprise built around these kind of animals, because they are selling, they are the most undervalued animal at the stock sale, which, if you follow Bud Williams and what his daughter Tina Williams and her husband Richard are doing, that is what they emphasize, is you want to be buying the most undervalued animal at the sale. Doesn't matter what it is. Bulls, cows, bred cows, heifers, steers, baby cows. There's a way to know what is the undervalued animal, and that's what you're going for. So stay tuned on that. It's definitely something we're going to be doing more with the next year, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for those of you who are in the beef area to make money here. My door is opening. The children are returning, so I'm going to sign off for tonight. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We will see you around, and have a Merry Christmas, Good New Year. Start planning out next year, and we will see you all next time. Take care. There he is. All right, have a good night, YouTube. We'll see ya.